When I landed in Tel Aviv, the first thing I noticed was how different it was from what I had imagined. The city didn't look like the pictures I had seen of desert landscapes or ancient ruins. Instead, it was modern, bustling, and full of life. The sun reflected off sleek glass buildings, while the Mediterranean waves crashed against the long stretches of sandy beach. Tel Aviv felt vibrant, youthful, and confident, as though it was looking toward the future while still holding echoes of the past. Walking through Tel Aviv's Caramel Market, I felt surrounded by sensory overload. Spices in bright reds and yellows were stacked in pyramids, the smell of falafel and shawarma filled the air, and shopkeepers shouted over each other to get my attention. But in a way it felt alive and welcoming, as though the city wanted me to dive straight into its energy. Cafes stayed open late, music spilled out of small bars, and people crowded the streets even past midnight. For a moment, it was easy to forget just a short drive away. Tension and conflict were part of daily reality. Tel Aviv gave me a glimpse of modern Israel, one that was cosmopolitan, restless, and constantly moving. Leaving Tel Aviv for Jerusalem felt like traveling across centuries in just an hour's drive. As the city appeared on the horizon, I felt a shift in atmosphere. The golden stones of Jerusalem seemed to glow under the sun, and the hills carried a weight of history that felt impossible to ignore. Entering the old city, I immediately got lost in its maze of narrow alleys, arched doorways, and bustling souks. It was as though every corner carried a story waiting to be told. The air was thick with incense, flickering candlelights danced across ancient walls, and the sounds of hymns echoed softly. It felt otherworldly, as though time itself had slowed down. Crossing into the West Bank revealed another layer of reality. In Bethlehem, I saw the separation wall stretching high into the sky, covered in graffiti that turned pain into art. Ramallah, on the other hand, surprised me with its energy. It was a reminder that the Palestinian life was not defined solely by struggle. Leaving the West Bank behind, I traveled north toward the Golan Heights. The landscape opened up into rolling hills and vast stretches of farmland. Cafes buzzed with conversation, young people gathered in art galleries, and music floated through the streets. Vineyards lined the roads, and the air was cooler, carrying the scent of pine and soil. It felt peaceful at first glance, but I knew the history. The wars fought here, and this peaceful landscape had been scarred by decades of conflict, and its quiet hills carried stories of displacement and uncertainty. It felt peaceful at first glance, but I knew the history. The wars fought here, the strategic importance of the land, and the lives disrupted by its contested status. Yet, in the middle of this, life went on. Farmers worked the land, families picnicked under the sun, and small towns thrived despite the shadow of history. The resilience I saw here echoed what I had seen in the West Bank. The human ability to adapt, endure, and carve out memory. As my trip came to an end, I thought about the contrast I had witnessed. Tel Aviv was alive with modern energy, Jerusalem was heavy with sacred history, and the West Bank was filled with resilience and struggle. And the Golan Heights carried both beauty and scars. The human ability to adapt, endure, and carve out moments of joy even in places marked by conflict. Each place revealed a different face of Israel and Palestine, and together they formed a picture too complex to fit into headlines of soundbites. The news often reduces these places into politics. What struck me most was how human everything felt. The news often reduces these places to politics, but being there reminded me that beyond the walls, checkpoints, and conflicts are people who simply want to live their lives. People who laugh, dream, and hope just like anyone else. I didn't come away with solutions or easy answers. If anything, I left with more questions. But I also left with empathy, with memories of faces and voices that reminded me that history and politics are lived by ordinary people every day. My trip to Israel and Palestine wasn't just about visiting holy sites or famous landmarks. It was about witnessing history in its most raw, complicated, and resilient form. It was about realizing that beneath every headline there are lives, and behind every wall there are stories waiting to be told. As I boarded my flight home, I carried these stories with me, determined not to forget them, and hoping to share them so that way others could see what I had seen. Not just conflict, but a land filled with contradictions, beauty, and mostly of all people.